Tässä ohjelmassa esitellään alkoholijuomia. Varmistathan, että alueella, jossa sitä kuuntelet, on laillista kuunnella alkoholijuomista kertovia podcasteja. Kiitos.
Which means material for adults only. You must be of legal age in the country you are in to continue listening. Na fali rosnącej popularności storytellingu coraz więcej marketerów chce wykorzystać jego potencjał. Opowiadanie historii w marketingu jest jednak trudne. W podcaście Marketing Opowieści gościmy praktyków, którzy z sukcesem użyli storytellingu w swoich kampaniach. Razem z nimi udowadniamy, że opowiadanie dobrych historii nie jest zarezerwowane tylko dla wybranych. Nazywam się Michał Kasprzyk i zapraszam Was do wspólnego odkrywania tajników storytellingu. Imagine you are standing in front of a steam sauna. You open the door and an intense heat immediately blows in your face. You enter, spread a towel on the wooden boards and sit down. The heated stones are still quietly sizzling from the water that has just been poured on them. You close your eyes and relax. Various thoughts come into your head. Do you suppress them or give them a chance? What ideas do you get when you are in a sauna? Our guest who went to a sauna with a group of friends was in a similar situation. While sipping whiskey, they began to wonder why no one made rye whiskey in Finland. Surprisingly, the next morning the idea of starting their own distillery still seemed good. From that moment, the journey began, and today's episode will be guided by Kyro Distillery co-founder Mikko Koskinen. Hello, Mikko. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
At the very beginning, we always ask our guests a few quick questions. So if you could answer in just one sentence or one word even. So I have 4 such questions for you.
Let's go.
What were you doing before Kyro, besides drinking whiskey in a sauna?
I failed 2 startups and did stand-up comedy.
What's your favorite whiskey or gin besides Kyro?
That's a tough one.
Drink specials!
I love Lafroy 16 as a, let's say, go-to whiskey, and dry rye gin by St. George of California for the gin.
And what's your favorite story? It can be a book, movie, podcast, whatever.
I really love the story of Shackleton. It's a story about a failed attempt to reach Antarctica. And the real success is that nobody died. And they ended up spending, I think, 6 to 8 months in very, very bad conditions. And that was, let's say, an excellent demonstration of leadership.
Finland is not famous for its whiskey distilleries. So why did you start making whiskey and gin?
We wanted to change the culture. So we deliberately thought that we're going to do only spirits that have a lot of flavor to get from, let's say, functional drinking into more flavor-based drinking culture.
The campaign I wanted Mikko to talk about is infused with storytelling. I was curious, what stories do Finns tell themselves and which ones had a direct impact on our guests?
That's an excellent question. And there's a couple of ways to take influence from stories. So there's, of course, like the national myth Kalevala. There's some stories that are, I think, somehow integrated in my storytelling at Kyro. Secondly, there's a movie style of Kaurismäki, which is like deadpan, really like dark and usually sad stories. And we've definitely taken from that world as well. And as a storyteller, I think that all of the Finns are somehow affected by the story that we tell about the Second World War and how we maintained independence in that.
Actually, quite a few sad stories I hear.
Yes, and that's one of the biggest paradoxes. Most of the stories that you would get in Finland are somehow sad, but we're still, like, I think 5th time in a row selected as the happiest nation in the world, and I think it just came out like last week.
Wow. How do you do that? I mean, what's the secret?
Have no idea. I think we just let all the bad feelings come out with the sad stories, and then your everyday life looks better because the contrast is big.
Have you always been a fan of storytelling, of consuming stories, or did it start only when you took up brand promotion at Kyro?
I've always loved it. I think the biggest school on storytelling was when I started to do stand-up comedy. I was studying mechanical engineering, and I actually finally graduated. It only took me 10 years. But during my studies, I started doing stand-up comedy, and I did it for 8 years, around 300 gigs.
Wow.
And produced 2 clubs. And that environment, I would say, that really shaped my storytelling, because it's one of the strongest feedback loops that you can get in the world. Like, you go on stage, and whenever you fail and you think that everybody's going to laugh and it's dead silent, like, the pain that you get from that is just
that's tough,
like excruciating. But on the other hand, like, there's been, and it hasn't been always the case, but there was a time when I did enough gigs so that I got to a level where I could play the audience. Like, I could tell the story and then just like decide what kind of laughter, when, how long it's going to last. And then it felt almost like surfing on the audience's reaction.
That's something that comes only from experience, right?
Yeah. And I think you have to do it. Well, I think I've done it like 10,000 hours magical limit of storytelling, or practicing, or thinking, or writing.
What was your favorite joke that you did?
There's a reason why I don't do it anymore. That's my favorite joke.
You were surfing the audience. and there's a reason you're not doing it. Okay, let's leave it at that. We're not talking about stand-up today, so that's fine.
No, the reason why I'm not doing it anymore is because before starting Kyro, I failed 2 companies. And when we started, we couldn't really pay ourselves that much salary. I took a loan that my parents' house was mortgaged against. And I basically had to choose like where to focus.
Okay.
So I decided that I'm going to leave comedy and focus completely in alcohol. And I'm not the only comedian that has made that choice.
Okay. And why did you decide to take up brand promotion at Kyro in particular?
It was supposed to be that I'll take care of it until we find somebody who's good enough. And we never really found. Well, now I've moved the responsibilities to Sun, our now head of commercial and brand. But before that, it just somehow seemed kind of natural. And I also found like a team with which we had really good chemistry. And when you have that kind of dream team in place, you kind of want to stick with it.
No, that's a good one. You studied mechanical engineering. You were a stand-up comedian. Did you have any marketing experience or marketing? Have you learned marketing before, or have you just started just because?
Because of the necessity. So I did some marketing for like promoting the clubs and got some experience from there, but it wasn't anything that extensive. Then I also studied a little bit of industrial design, and there I kind of picked up some of like visual things and design part that can be used in storytelling and branding, especially when you start weaving the story in physical things and design. For example, our font is from an old war memorial close to the distillery. So like those kind of connections and how to weave them into the like DNA of the company and DNA of the products and brand came from there. But other than that, not really.
Okay. I love it that you are so inspired by everything around you. That's very cool.
That also comes from the necessity, because we don't have as you said, there's not that many whiskey distilleries in Finland, so there's no heritage that we can build upon. Where in Scotland, you can take like a wealth of heritage and build your own brand on top of that. But in Finland, we don't have it. So we had to build on top of local heritage and local history and somehow make it credible. Because when you start a company, it's like it's first in your mind, then you print a T-shirt and take it from there.
This must have been exciting because you basically created the story of whiskey in Finland.
Well, there were some distilleries before, but what we did was very strict focus on rye. So we distill only rye, and our whiskey is 100% rye whiskey.
You're probably as curious as I was about what this whiskey campaign is really about. But before that, I wanted to find out more about where Mikko got his storytelling knowledge, and did he have any mentors?
So I have to mention two huge influences, and we worked really close with them. Other one is Anssi Kähärä from Verklik. He's responsible for most of the visual design, labels, and so forth. And other one is Kimmo Syväri. He took the very first photo where all the 5 founders run naked in a rye field. And we originally took that photo for a whiskey book. We took it, we didn't have stills, we didn't have production, we didn't have products. We had to take one photo that somehow captures and crystallizes what the distillery is about. And one of the most important lessons that I got from Kimmo at that point was that when you start things and you start a brand, you have to be extra bold, because everything is going to be watered down. But as long as you plant the flag, do something that really stands, that'll give the people and the growing team license to go wild. And if you don't have that, you'll just become a plain brand at some point.
So the photo itself is the bold statement, or is it the story around it?
I think the photo itself is a bold statement, and I think it's the fastest way to introduce somebody to Kyro. I think we printed around 1 million of the coasters with that photo on them, and we get emails from all over the world of people that, I had these coasters, but now I somehow poured something on top of them and they are ruined. If you send me some more. So that has become such an iconic photo, and that carries a lot of the meaning that we have in Kyro.
Are you still reprinting those, or was it just one batch?
No, we're still reprinting those very much. I think we do have.
You have some around.
Okay, I'm at our conference room, and as you can see,
right.
Well, not necessarily the best thing to show things in podcast. Might be a storyteller, but not the smartest one. But yeah, we do have a photo of that here as well.
To explain what happens here, Mikko just showed me the photograph we talked about. We'll link to it in the podcast description. It's pretty easy to find it on Kyro's website, so I recommend you take a look there. Back to the conversation. The Kyro distillery campaign we're talking about has been a huge success. However, it's obvious that the road to success is not a bed of roses. So I'm sure Mikko and his friends also made some mistakes.
I think I've done a couple. And one thing that I don't think that we covered is that advertising or marketing spirits in Finland is illegal.
Oh.
Unless you do it inside bars,
mm-hmm.
or you strictly focus on the corporate image.
Okay.
So that has shaped our marketing quite a bit. And a lot of the things that we've done for Germany were done for the first time. So we had to learn how to market and translate, because we didn't have those tools as they were illegal in Finland. But coming to the biggest marketing mistake, I think it's more on the product side. So we saw that there's going to be a lot of competition in gin. We saw that bartenders are in key role when we want to remain relevant. But instead of doing like new gins all the time, we wanted to do something that makes us as a company relevant for the bartenders. So we invited bartenders, did a like collaborative creation process, and came up with 2 bitters.
Mm-hmm.
And with those 2 bitters, we tried to be smart, and we printed black on black label and white on white label, because there were 2, black and white. And what happened was that, first of all, nobody could read it because it's white on white. It's fun when you hold the bottle, but in a bar, you seldom hold the bottle. It's in the back bar. And secondly, it became a thing that like bartenders rooted for. So it's cool that that exists, but nobody was using it in a larger scale. So where the strategy was to more or remain relevant within the bartenders, we didn't end up doing that. Or at least we remained relevant, but not through that. And so many different mistakes in that project.
So you wanted to create kind of a cool gimmick that didn't work out in the end.
Or like niche product would be
okay,
like something that would make bartenders feel special as it's directed for their use in a bar.
All right. And I know you have another story with bartenders regarding napkins.
Yes.
What's the deal with this?
Well, that's I think that might be the even larger mistake, but
sorry to point
I'm
it
not
out.
sure whether it would count for a mistake. So previously, we used to have different brand structure. So we used to have a gin called Napue, which is the name of a village.
Mm-hmm.
We had another gin called Koskue, another name of a village, and then we had the distillery Kyro. It worked in Finland, but the further away we went from the home country, the more efficient our communication was. Like it had to be. And having Napue and Koskue and Kyro, nobody like understood, for example, in the States, nobody understood what was it about. And I was conducting a research on like what is happening and how the market entry is going. And I witnessed somebody trying to ask for Napue and getting a napkin in a crowded and slightly noisy bar. So that sort of made it, and we decided that we're going to go with the name Kyro in all of our products and be happy with it. One of the reasons why we built that hierarchy in the first place was that as advertising spirits is illegal, we were afraid that if we have the name of the company and the name of the spirit the same, like it might become a trouble for us. The law has since changed, but to give you an example on how strict the law was, before we founded Kyro, I blog about founding a company and so forth. And I think it had somewhat, maybe like 200 readers in total or something. But somehow, when we registered the company, we got a call from Valvira, who takes care of the alcohol surveillance. And they said that we have to take the blog down because we have named the types of spirit. So it was illegal to say that, hi, we're Kyro Distillery and we distill gin. You can say that, hey, we're Kyro Distillery and we distill.
Oh.
So we've come a long way from there. That was 2014.
Uh-huh.
But that's the reason why we constructed in a way that we did.
I've seen on your YouTube channel that some of the first videos, they are actually about the distillery itself. So that's the reason, I guess.
Yes. And if you scroll down at the bottom of our social media or Instagram, for example, you will see that only recently, and there was a change in law that allowed us to post pictures of our own products, not drink pictures or nothing promotional, just a plain white background product shot.
Okay. And because of the change in law, you could record the whole story ad?
No, the whole story ad is because we founded a company in Germany.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have Kyro GmbH, and we transferred the management of our social media for that company. And they can't be accessed in Finland, or we can't promote them in Finland, which is weird because like Finnish people visiting Berlin, like there might be Berliners who are like, amazing video. You must have seen it. I think it has in total, it's more than 2 million views.
Right.
And almost none of that is from our domestic market.
Wow. That's ridiculous. The law is ridiculous, but I guess there's some reason behind it. So
that's a topic for a whole episode.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at campaigns advertising Scotch whiskey, for example, you will see beautiful islands and distilleries with many years of experience. The gentleman from Kyro approached it completely differently.
There's nothing but rye. And because it's always dark, the weather sucks, and the soil is shit, Finnish rye grows under the harshest conditions. So it's tough. Not tough guy tough. I mean, Finnish farmer tough.
So I think that we have to take the agency Allure. They were quite active in copywriting for that. And I think the tone of voice is deadpan, and the whole point is like that underdog kind of like attitude. So we don't have what, for example, Scots have, but we can still do pretty amazing stuff. And secondly, our budgets are so small that we need to make ads that are very efficient
and viral.
And that ad has turned out to be extremely efficient. And when we put it online, our like online sales doubled instantly.
Wow.
So
that's impressive. I'm not really surprised because the ad is, it is very shareable. I mean, you see it, you laugh with it, and then you decide, okay, my friends need to see this, and then the share goes. So I'm not surprised about it.
Thank you.
But still, the narration there is very specific. And I'm wondering, because Finland is not the most popular country in the world.
Yet.
Poland isn't either, so don't worry about it. Didn't you have any doubts regarding whether people are going to understand the jokes in the ad, especially given the fact that it's targeted outside of Finland?
Yeah, it was really, really, really scary to do. It was the biggest production that we've done. We also had very specific shooting time. And in that video, I was the narrator in that one. And we had to do like single shot take, quite long, I think in total almost 2 minutes. And then not knowing whether it'll work was kind of interesting. And I think this plays to our advantage again, because when you have heritage and when you're well known, like Scotland or let's say Italy or France, you're sort of tied to certain kind of storytelling, certain kind of tone of voice. And we don't have that burden either. So we could develop our own storytelling. And a couple of the references that we used in that, like when doing that video, was Rare Exports, which is an excellent clip, and then a couple of Johnny Walker's like Striding Man or Walking Man Who Walk the Earth, I think is the correct word, and Dollar Shave Club, traditional let's make pitch into a ad. But we needed to package country branding, like product brands and company brand in one video, because we wanted to move people from not knowing what Kyro is about to, oh, I do need to order or find this, like within one video.
You made it. It totally works.
Thank you.
You said that, and if somebody saw the ad, by the way, it's linked in the show notes. The ad is shot in one go, in one shot, and it takes more or less 2.5 minutes, I think. How many times have you repeated the shot, or did you get it at the first try?
my memory is slightly blurred like from that time. I think we did maybe 11 takes. And before that, we did like practice runs throughout the day before, and then started shooting like 2 a.m. in the morning. And because it's in the summer, so we wanted to capture that like early summer morning vibe in the video.
2 a.m. in Finland is morning.
At the height of the distillery, and in the summer, I think this night lasts somewhere around 3 to 4 hours.
What didn't go according to the plan? I mean, besides doing 11 takes, which is already quite a lot, but I imagine that some other stuff didn't go according to the plan as well.
Yeah, so I'm almost naked there, and I had to use this like very specific glueable underwear. Don't recommend it at all. So I probably should have shaved before. It was tricky, first of all, to get it stuck and then getting it out with that glue. So that's one thing. Then I think overall there wasn't that many setbacks in that shooting, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah, given the result and the one take, that's a lot. By the way, one of the silly questions I wanted to ask towards the end of the conversation was how was it being naked around the whole crew? But I guess you already answered that. So.
It was really weird. Luckily we do have the sauna culture, and luckily I had that small piece of cloth glued to cover my private parts. However, it was kind of cold morning and doing 11 takes, and the sauna wasn't on, so that's artificial smoke that comes out when I open the door. So I was pretty well done after shooting. On top of that, we had at the end of the video, there's 2 girls playing soccer, and one of them, or 3 girls, and one of them tackles me. Those girls were from the like Finnish rugby national team. And they hit me hard 11 times, completely. I think I had headache for 2 days afterwards.
You know, I had a sort of similar situation because I happened to be an extra in the movie by Spielberg, Bridge of Spies, because they shot it in Wrocław, in our city.
Yeah.
And there was one scene in which the extras are in the background, somewhere far, and we are jumping down from a truck. And it was quite high. It was, I don't know, 1.5 meter probably. And we did, I think, 8 or 9 takes. And when I was jumping off for the 8th time, I almost fell to the ground because it was already so exhausting. And I wasn't used to it at all. And that whole scene wasn't even in the movie.
That's always fun.
Yeah. So I understand making several takes and being tackled. Yeah, that's painful.
Naked. Yeah.
Yeah. On top of that, I was wearing clothes, so that was easier for me, I guess.
Lucky you.
The rye distillate campaign from the town of Kyro is Finland in a nutshell. You will find plenty of references to things specific only to the cold land of Northern Europe. Every viewer is sure to find his or her favorite motive in it. And which part of the story captured Mikko's heart the most?
My favorite part definitely is...
And you can taste this in our Kyro gin, which we distill on one very special day that we Finns like to call the summer.
And that's something that would be hard to write, but getting that timing right, like enough pause so that it feels like a punchline without being too punchliney, and the fact that the people that are dancing in the background give the crown or flower crown exactly on the right time. I think that was really a lot of fun. Another thing that I enjoyed was that we left Sweden out of the map in the beginning.
Why? I wanted to ask about that as well.
Like, we have very amicable relationship with Sweden. I would say that Swedes see Finns as, let's say, the baby brothers, or like there they are. They're not as civilized as we are, but they are there. And we wanted to sort of give a kind tease back. And according to our Swedish distributor, everybody laughs and like in Sweden, and everybody understands the sort of amicable tone of that joke.
Okay. That's so great that you put so many details inside. I personally love the fact that you kind of hid in the ad, but they're out in the open actually, some values that you have as Finns and as Kyro, a company, I think. For example, you talk about women's right to vote, you talk about free education, and you say something like, however your gin identifies, which I find a nod towards LGBT community.
Yeah.
So this is so cool that you hid those values inside of the commercial as well.
Oh, thanks. And that was also really scary, because it feels that, or I was really scared that nod would have been misunderstood, but it was definitely a nod on like acceptance, and like it's completely fine to identify as you identify.
Yeah, I cannot speak for the LGBT community, but I perceive it positively. So
well, that is good.
That's for one. Okay. Would you do anything differently in this commercial?
I think it's really, really well made. Only things that I might have made like slightly differently are like style-wise, like made the map in the beginning differently.
Include Sweden?
Oh no, never. But having it somehow more finalized in style, like and with style.
Okay.
So I think the copy itself works amazingly, timing and all of that. There's room for improvement for sure, but those are like minor things that are really, really hard to get right in that kind of production with our budgets.
But the storytelling in Kyro Distillery's marketing efforts doesn't stop with just advertising. Their entire website and social media communication are story-driven. One of the most interesting things is a virtual tour of the distillery in Kyro.
Like one of the key strengths that we have as a brand is that we built a lot of things that are not just facade. Like you can go behind and see that, oh, okay, so this is how it's made to look. And the best way to convert somebody to be a brand lover is to have them visit the distillery. And before COVID, we had around 20,000 visitors to the distillery, and we quite frequently got people that flew in from like Japan or US specifically to visit Kyro. So we saw that with COVID, it's not going to be possible for people to visit, but we wanted to give that opportunity for people. And there was also a government grant on like adjusting for COVID. And so we used some of that money and we did the distiller visit experience together with Kimmo Syväri. And I think I have to dig up the name of that Klaus. I don't even remember his last name, but he's a Swedish videographer, a really, really, really good one. And he just happened to be in Finland and took a random job of 2 days at the distillery.
Nice. Yeah, I love the tour. I took it and it's great. So I felt almost like I would be there. Maybe
you should come. And
maybe
visit.
At some point. By the way, I've seen that you are doing Kyro Fest.
Yes.
How is it going to look like?
Kyro Fest is a festival where you would meet both local and the city folks in the same festival. It's quite small, so 1,600 people. But because we do enjoy certain stature in Finland, we get really good, at least domestic artists. And the focus is in like quality drinks, quality food, and let's say providing Kyro like a festival experience. And what is Kyro like, you might ask? And I think it's about like providing contrast. So something that is like really, I don't know, high culture or really cool and then marrying that with something that is more robust and rustic.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, what is really cool is that you create a way for people to connect, or a way for people from different backgrounds to connect. One example is that we had a really, really good and slightly ironic DJ called the Windows 95 Man. And he plays like 80s hits. And you could see the hipsters of Helsinki and the people from Isokura dancing with the same music. Others maybe enjoying it wholeheartedly, others maybe slightly ironically, but it was like very nice joint shared experience.
That sounds so amazing, so exciting. Oh, the cutoff is, I guess, is going to be a blast.
It is.
Anyway, I love the way you are telling stories as a company, and it's impressive how you take whatever you have inside within the company and you make a story out of it. Was it because of the law? Because it started like that, you had to advertise the distillery more than the alcohols, or is there some other reason behind using those internal stories as well?
Excellent question. I think it's a little bit of the alcohol law thing, where we had to find things that we can that are interesting for people without saying that we distill gin, and make Kyro somehow lovable without, or let people feel connected, and then make that. The second thing is that we built heritage out of nothing, which means that it was completely like we had no credibility when we started. That was also before the gin boom and the craft distilleries really started to come out. But when we started, it felt like we need to do things twice as good or 3 times as good as the established players or the new players from established countries, because otherwise we'll just be like a weird thing that isn't interesting. But if we manage to go over a certain threshold, then it becomes a destination. Almost like if you like Noma as a restaurant in Denmark, they managed to do something that is so unique that it transformed the whole Danish like restaurant scene. And the way to do it was just focusing on things that they had that weren't necessarily valued before,
and create value on its own, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny if you think of a kilogram of rye. You can sell it without anything, and it's, I don't know, I think 20 cents on grain form. Then you can make vodka out of it, and it's around the same, that maybe 25 cents of value or 30 cents of value. Or you can distill a rye gin, rye whiskey out of it, and the value of it will go up 10 times. So, and of course there's flavor and packaging and all of that, but a lot of it is storytelling and providing the product as a way to connect with the stories.
Mm-hmm. So based on your experience and all the things you've said today, what advice would you give to marketers regarding using storytelling in marketing campaigns or to promote brands? What's your advice?
I would say that it's important to give a damn. It feels like marketing, you can do quite okay in marketing while remaining quite superficial.
Mm-hmm.
But when you build that knowledge and appreciation for the craft, and you go the extra mile to sort of bring the stories really to life, making the bold suggestions, if you work in an agency, like make the bold suggestion to the client, and risking that you might look like a fool, caring and maybe being brave. Most of the marketeers that I know have like excellent ideas,
mm-hmm.
but many of them also have a filter where of things that they can say, or they can suggest, or they can put their weight on.
But how do you make somebody or convince somebody to go bold?
Well, when we started, we self-financed the whole company, which meant that all of the 5 founders, we put somewhere between, I think, 40 to 40 to 90,000 euros, depending on the founder. And still we managed to use quite a bit of that sum on marketing and branding before we started production. And the reason why we did that was that we saw that we have no credit. We have no, there's no other option. If we don't do it, if we're not bold enough, it doesn't we can go home already. It's not going to work. It's going to be a hobby. Of course, it's easier to be an entrepreneur and taking the risks, but being on the client side, I've also enjoyed most when I've been pitched crazier idea, as long as there's a good grounds, not crazy in the sake of crazy, but bold because there's a reason behind being bold.
Okay, so it has to be something more than crazy in order to convince somebody.
Yeah, and I think it's like Sherlock Holmes once said that when you rule out all the obvious options or obvious scenarios, what you're left is might be the craziest one, but it's the one to go with.
That's a great quote to finish our conversation on.
Fantastic, because I'm fairly sure that it's also misquoted.
Might be. Like many quotes around the internet.
Yes, that is true.
But before I let you go, I still have a creative task for you. We give one to every guest.
The moment that I haven't been afraid of.
Yeah. Don't worry. You can take the time if you need to think about it more, then that's fine. So the task is, if you are making whiskey from distillate of licorice and the Moomins, how would you tell the story of it?
First of all, I have to process this in my brains, because you can't make whiskey out of those ingredients.
You never know.
That is true. I think I would tie the story in, and it's actually pretty easy because we've made whiskey with Moomins on it. It's not commercially available, but one of our investors is Moomin Characters, who owns the rights for Moomins. So
that's so cool.
We did one whiskey for them, and they gifted it away. But I would take a look on what are the stories that Moomin had.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that links to licorice, if there's anything linking to whiskey. And having read it when I was a child, I know that there's a strip where they find, there's a shipwreck and they find whiskey. And there's a very specific comic strip where Moomin Pappa says that, be careful, it might be whiskey. So, and we actually did it. So I would put that on the label and then use it as the sort of way to bridge it. And when it comes to the licorice part, I would try to make the connection with maybe the pipe of the Moomin Pappa and the fact that he needs to stop smoking, and hence he has changed the pipes into licorice pipes, which is a thing that exists.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, that's such a great idea. And the fact that you've actually partially done it, it's mind-blowing, to be honest. Anyway, Mikko, thank you very much for our conversation. It was a real pleasure.
No, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. Drogi słuchaczu, droga słuchaczko, wierzę w to, że historia tej kampanii będzie dla Ciebie świetną inspiracją do użycia storytellingu w następnej kampanii Twojej marki. Kontynuuj z nami podróż po świecie dobrze opowiedzianych historii i zasubskrybuj podcast Marketing Opowieści w Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts lub Twojej ulubionej aplikacji do słuchania podcastów. A jeśli chcesz wyprodukować podcast i potrzebne Ci wsparcie, odwiedź stronę marketingopowieści.pl. Link do strony oraz wszystkich wymienionych w odcinku materiałów znajdziesz w opisie podcastu.